Well, coming up on today's show, Nissan thinks mild hybrids will soon be obsolete. Toyota respectfully disagrees. Centrica plugs into electric car charging, and the Tesla Model 3 outsells all of one particular German maker's cars combined in July. Any ideas? I'll tell you soon. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello and welcome to the Monday, the 6th of August edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here with the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transports. If you haven't downloaded it yet, by the way, there's an interview from 2 days ago, a Saturday special with Clean Car, Alex Baker at Clean Car. Their technology will log your journeys either in your existing car or your fleet, and then they use their fancy pants data. I won't pretend to understand what they do. To tell you which EV is the optimal one for you based on your driving route and all those kind of things. Please go back and listen to it and download it if you haven't heard the weekend. Maybe you are listening on a Monday today, you're catching up, had a weekend away from the usual routine. Well, download the weekend podcasts and see what you think and leave me a comment and maybe get in touch with Alex and tell him you heard them on this show if you want to say hi to him. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much to the first 11 Patreon producers of this show. I haven't even launched Patreon yet. I really had no idea if anybody would even support the programme. I've been doing this for 202 days non-stop. I appreciate the lovely comments, the feedback, the iTunes ratings. All of that means so much to me. Loads of people said, you know what, I'd love to contribute. Like $5, it's a few pounds. Clearly, you put loads of work into this. I get lots out of it. You know, people have been saying, I'd like to support you. And I've held off for now. But we've gone and launched a Patreon page. If you get any value out of this show at all, whether you learn something every day, whether it entertains you, I hope so. I'll give you those details at the end of the show, and if you are finished with the news, feel free to turn it off. I love free stuff. If you love free stuff, the show will always be free. There's the good news. It's totally optional. You don't have to pay for this show at all. It's not something that I want you to think about listening to the end to find out those Patreon details. Let's start with the news. We'll start with Birmingham. Alabama. Birmingham, Alabama's busiest airport, is adding a new convenience for travellers with electric cars: free vehicle chargers. Officials say 9 new chargers are being added to the car park, the parking deck at Birmingham-Shuttlesworth International Airport. 3 of the chargers are in the hourly section of the park, and 6 of them are in the long-term parking, according to YellowHammerNews. Well, the new units resulted from a partnership between Birmingham Airport Authority and the Alabama Power Company. A statement says Birmingham becomes the first passenger airport in the state with EV chargers. The airport has more than 120 daily departures on 5 airlines. They're going to come in so useful. I don't know the charge speeds for those, but either way, going to be so useful. Well, a date for your diary tomorrow, if you are listening to this on the day the podcast is published, August the 7th at 2 p.m, America's Car Museum. Proud to kick off this first new electric vehicle fast charger at the Car Museum along the I-5 corridor as part of the West Coast Electric Highway, with historic vehicles dating back to the early electric cars, the first electric cars that were ever built. Today's America's Car Museum is bringing a new generation of EVs as it unveils the newest fast charging station at the city's entrance. The cord-cutting, the ribbon-cutting ceremony will be 2 p.m. on August the 7th, and another new charger from pluginamerica.org. That article will be in the show notes if you want to read more. Well, Fred at Electrek spent the weekend making a list. Oh, we all love a top 5. You know, there's something about guys that like making lists. I love a good list. And Fred's made a top 5 list of the top 5 cars coming before 2020. Electric cars that will either be affordable and or that will disrupt segments or even the industry. At number 5, he's put the VW ID, and the ID concept, for now only known as the VW ID. We know there'll be the Cross and the Buzz with all the Zs, but it might end up being called the ID Neo. This is the one that's the Golf-sized car, right? And it does replace the Golf, although officially VW saying it's not replacing the Golf, the fact that there'll be no more e-Golfs made, but there will be this. You know, it's the same size car. Well, VW's been planning to release a production version in 2020 based on the concept that they revealed 2 years ago in 2016. Fred puts at number 4 the Mercedes-Benz EQC. By the time the EQC comes out next year, there's going to be 3 or 4 full electric options in that segment. Doesn't make it very unique, but it will result in electric vehicles taking over a lot of the market share of premium SUVs. My only concern with the EQC, the last I heard, 70 kilowatt hour battery, and no matter how efficient and great your software engineers are at Mercedes, it's a big, heavy, 2-ton SUV. Mercedes, correct me if I'm wrong with 70 kilowatt hours. It's the last I heard. It seems kind of on the small side. We'll see. Volvo, the all-electric XC40, is in third place. Not much known about the vehicle yet. That their latest CUV platform was built with the idea of multiple powertrains, including all-electric. It's the styling, though, of the XC40. Woo! That is a lovely looking car. In second place, the Porsche Taycan, spelt Taycan, pronounced Taycan. I especially like the Taycan, says Fred, formerly the Mission E, which is a killer name, should still be called that, for its potential to convince hardcore petrol heads like Porsche fanatics of the advantages of going electric. And the number one car, drum roll please, on his list is the Tesla Roadster, bringing back the Roadster with the new generation that launched the company over 10 years ago. The first production car to do 0 to 60 under 2 seconds. The first production car to do a quarter mile under 9 seconds. The first production car with a top speed over 250 miles an hour. It won't just redefine electric cars, it will redefine cars. And Elon's talked about the halo effect of certain cars. Cars that go very quickly 0 to 60. Cars with a high top speed. And because of the halo effect, people think that ICE cars must be better. So with all three of those nailing anyway of a combustion car having a halo effect on the whole industry, every other combustion car. And so that is why it's so important. I agree with Fred putting that at number one. What do you think? Let us know in the comments section. Any that have been missed off that list. What about the Model Y? Moving on, and Nissan, Renault and Mitsubishi, of course the alliance that all makes cars under one headline banner, really, all have experience building hybrids and electric vehicles, so the alliance is well positioned to introduce any new models. Well, Renault-Nissan Advanced Product Planning Manager is Warwick Daly, and Warwick expects 35% of Nissan's European sales to be electrified by 2025, with the goal of 20% of sales coming from plug-ins by 2020. That's according to carbuzz.com. He says, "We want to stay ahead of the curve," says Warwick Daly, adding his opinion that the mild hybrid will start to become obsolete. So here is someone from one side of the industry saying mild hybrids have a place today, but soon to be obsolete. Our electrification offer will change over time, he says. Clearly, plug-ins and EVs will play more of a significant role moving forward for Nissan. The Leaf will play a bigger role, Daly said, pointing out the new car is selling at a 40% higher volume than the previous Leaf. As SUVs grow in popularity, it only makes sense to give the Leaf an SUV sibling. We heard the rumours that that's going to be coming, and we are looking forward to more future plans from Nissan. In the short term, by the way, we want to know more details about the 60, is it or 64 kilowatt hour or 60 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf? And is it going to be exactly the same car but with a different battery, or are they going to tweak the car a little bit in the style that Tesla does? Rather than having model years, they just make little iterative improvements. And what do you think of that? Is their way of doing it better? Or is the Toyota way of doing it better, which is to nail your colours to the mast? Toyota are bang on, nailed on, all about mild hybrids. They've got some other stuff in the works, but almost half their cars in Europe sold this year are mild hybrids. To try and deny the fact that they are all about hybrids would be a bit cheeky. So maybe their way of doing it for the next 5 or 10 years is the way to electrify cars. Let me know in the comments section or bung me an email, hello@evnewsdaily.com, if you want to have your say, and I'll pass on your comments to the thousands of people that listen to this show. Well, Britain's biggest energy provider is taking its smart electricity drive on the road with the company's first major investment in EV charging, says Gillian Ambrose for the Telegraph newspaper today. In the coming days, the owner of British Gas is expected to unveil a multi-million-pound investment in a software company that already helps to power more than 200,000 drivers in the US and Europe. Now, sources close to Centrica have said the investment is going to be in the Israeli startup Drives, D-R-I-I-V-Z, Drives, and it's going to accelerate its smart energy system ambitions from the home into the burgeoning market for EVs. Let's see if that tip comes off in the next couple of days. If it does, you can say you heard it here first. And if you haven't heard the Saturday special interview a couple of weeks ago with a company called Moixa in London, they started off making solar and storage products and do still make those for your house if you want to put solar on your PV on your roof and then have a storage. solution. They can do all of that for one price. They'll install it. It's all done and dusted by one company. They were very, very excited when I spoke to their CTO, their Chief Technology Officer, and he was very excited about what software can do in the future, long-term, mid to long-term future of EVs and household energy, and how that works with the grid and not only stops any new power stations being built, but your EV can replace a coal-fired power station. And it looks like Centrica have the same idea as well, with a big investment coming in a big software company. Well, moving on to the Model 3, and the Model 3 not only outsold particular models, that's all passenger cars except for maybe 7, according to Inside EVs, but for example, it outsold all of Mercedes-Benz passenger cars. Mercedes-Benz passenger cars, SUVs excluded, we should say, sold around 8,500 Mercedes-Benz passenger cars in the month of July. Mercedes-Benz sold a total of 20,000 vehicles in July. That's down a fifth, by the way. Big dip in July for Mercedes-Benz. With the Model 3 selling 14,000 models. Model 3 sold in July, with the ramp going over. If you look at the tweet that I put out yesterday, which was a link to the Bloomberg tracker, they reckon that it's over 5,000 a week now for the Model 3. August could well be over 20,000. I mean, that would be a big number. But August could be 20,000 Model 3s. They could be selling more Model 3s than all Mercedes-Benz, which number is 20,034 was sold in July. If that number was the same for August, that's a huge win for electric cars. There's a few furrowed brows, I imagine, in a few other boardrooms. I'm looking at you, Germany. Well, staying with the Tesla Model 3, Enrique Dans from Forbes.com says the Tesla Model 3 may not be the car for the masses due to its price. The average selling price is still not $35,000, but there are major savings to be made. Tax breaks, fuel, well, we'll call it energy because you don't put any fuel in, maintenance and resale, along with advantages as like free parking in some places, access to lanes for high occupancy vehicles. In short, households that cover more than 20,000 kilometres a year, Forbes say, should think seriously about buying a Tesla Model 3. But if you're considering buying an electric vehicle, any electric vehicle, and you find that the salesperson that you're talking to on the forecourt, the dealership, is trying to put you off and convincing you to move towards a petrol or diesel car, ask yourself this question. Why is that person saying that? Why might that be? You see, if Tesla succeeds in holding on to the top spot this month in the hyper-competitive luxury middle segment, then we could be witnessing a tipping point, an extremely traditional market deeply attached to fossil fuels that's beginning to realise that electric isn't just cool, it makes sense and it saves you money. Well, a final story on Model 3. We've still got some stories to come about Jaguar and Hyundai, but the final mention for Model 3 was actually a Twitter account that I follow called Model 3 VINs, and they tweeted yesterday, 5th of August, a batch of Model 3 VINs registered from about 78,500 to 81,000, 100% of those being dual motor. And then they registered 8,000 more Model 3 VINs. Again, 100% of those estimated to be dual motor. The highest VIN, 89,107. That's 10,000 in 2 batches in a short period of time. That is 10,000 VINs registered. Just going to show that that production ramp continues. Well, Jaguar's I-Pace electric car has Germany's famous Mercedes-Benz taxis in its sights, according to Dominic Wilde, writing for the always brilliant Motor1.com website. The British firm's debut battery-powered effort has delivered 10 of the crossovers to Munich's biggest taxi operator very recently. Mercedes-Benz has most of the German taxi market covered. Around 60% of Germany's taxis are Mercedes, many of which are the E-Class. They are kind of bulletproof where you get in one of those German E-Class taxis, and I've had a couple of business trips now to Germany, and you get in some pretty old ones that have done hundreds of thousands of miles, and they're still going strong. They are roughly half the price of the Jaguar I-Pace. A comparable Mercedes, the EQC crossover, of course, doesn't get launched until next year. Well, Jaguar's taxis are part of a plan by the city of Munich. It's the hometown of BMW, all about reducing pollution in the area. Rides in the new Jaguar I-Pace taxis are going to be subsidised by the city and the council too, with its paying of 20 cents per kilometre first per distance travelled. Well, Munich has one of the highest levels of pollution from diesel vehicles among German cities and could introduce bans on older cars. Those taxis that I just told you about, the ones that seem to have done hundreds of thousands of miles, those are going to be the ones that are going to be hit because they need to clean up the air as soon as possible. Final story then, an early demand for the Hyundai Kona Electric is the highest of any new Hyundai ever introduced. Already, the Korean firm is now worried it's not going to be able to keep up with demand. An article by Nat Barnes for the Express newspaper said today. Very few Kona sales are expected to be the lower model, the 39 kilowatt hour model. I think they're calling it the standard range. The monthly price difference between that and the long range 64 kilowatt hour model is minimal. If you're doing it on a finance plan, there's a smart regen mode, which I didn't know about, by the way, hadn't seen in any of the reviews, and it's found deep within the trip computer settings, which uses the road gradient and the traffic levels to automatically choose and adapt the best regen setting for you. If you don't want to be mucking about with flappy paddles, if you don't want to be mucking about with manual regen modes, the car will do it for you via software. It sounds ideal. But she says the reality is on the road, the kind of constant second guessing became a little frustrating. The manual settings, more preferable option according to this article. And of course, if you didn't know, the Hyundai Kona has regen settings from off, in other words, coast. If you're going down a big hill and you just want to coast, freewheel, you can do that, all the way up to the top setting on it. It's close to, but not quite e-pedal in the new Nissan Leaf. It's almost as hardcore as that. It will bring you to a complete stop, by the way. The two middle ones are probably the ones that people will use in nearly all of their driving situations in terms of managing regen. Well, finally, a massive thank you again to those early Patreon supporters. Let me say this up front to you. This podcast is always going to be free. If you listen to it every day, maybe sometimes you listen in batches, you do catch up, and you get any sort of value from it, the archive is always going to be online. It's always going to be on YouTube for free. I don't want you to think about having to look at this Patreon page and having to suddenly think, am I going to have to pay to access it? Not at all. If you're wondering, by the way, Patreon, Patreon, is a website where you can safely support creators of all sorts, by the way. In just a few clicks, you can put your card details in. It's very secure. They do all of the payment stuff. All I do is I see your name and your details come through, your email as well, by the way, and any other details that you do put in. So whether it's $5 a month, $10 a month, or more if you're a company or organisation, it helps contribute to making this show and other podcasts on there as well. I mean, what's $5? It's like a fancy coffee a month, I suppose. In return, I promise to always carry on making a new news show every single day that you can rely on being here to bring you the very latest, up-to-the-minute EV news. 5 hours of fresh content every month, all about EVs and energy, sourced from all around the world, and just waiting for you in your podcast app or on YouTube the next time you want to listen to it. Now, I know money's tight for most of us, and so don't feel like you have to contribute or anything, but if it's the kind of thing that you're thinking about checking out the page, it's at patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. That's patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. There's a link from the show notes on my website, and for anyone from an organisation or a business, there are some higher tiers on there you might be interested in, because if you want to support that level, the kind of credits that you would get on the show notes and the email and actually on air as well to the thousands of people that listen every day now, it might be the kind of thing that is useful to you. The first Patreon, before I even launched it and talked about it on the show, people that just found it. Thank you, Lawrence. Lawrence D. Allen was first. You should get a medal. I'd literally just hit go on the page, and he contributed. Glenn Mason has been helping me out, by the way. I've been chatting to Glenn over DM, and he's been giving me some hints and tips on how to use Patreon, and I really appreciate Glenn's advice. Glenn Mason, thank you so much. Hi to FreeJewel on Twitter. It is at FreeJewel. Thank you very much. I do have your name here. James, thank you so much. Ernie Rowland was next. Bjard I think your name is Bjard. I think that's what the symbol means above the A on your name. It's not Bard, but Bjard. Fjukstad, if I say your name wrong, let me know, and I'll say it again correctly. Darren. Darren Sant, by the way, has been a long-time supporter of this show. Darren, I appreciate that. Charlie Fox, thank you so much. Walter McVeigh, who I follow, and I get so much value out of following his Twitter, has contributed. Thank you, Walter McVeigh. Mark Robinson. Mark, thank you so much. Hi to Simon Telford, who, again, I follow all the time, has been going through some ups and downs with his new Nissan 40 kilowatt hour Leaf, and recently some more downs because it's had to go back to the dealer because of a problem with the battery. I'm getting annoyed for Simon. And hello to Philippe Calvet. Philippe Calvet has signed up at the executive producer level. First one, Philippe. Thank you so much. Like I say, there are 202 previous episodes, and they're all online for free, and you can get them all on the usual podcast places and the blog, evnewsdaily.com. If you subscribe, you get them first and automatically, and yes, for free. And if you can take 2 minutes to leave a little rating review, that would be so useful. It would mean the world to me. On the socials, I'm EV News Daily, and have a wonderful day today. We'll catch up tomorrow.